Can you imagine a court officer accepting money on your behalf, but like without any legal authorization?
Oh, wow.
That's the kind of shocking story that we're diving into today, a case that really went viral here in the Philippines and raises all sorts of questions about, trust and accountability in our judicial system.
Yeah, it really gets to the heart of how our courts function and what we expect from the people, the people who are upholding the law.
Right, exactly. So we're breaking down the case of Dr. Stella Marie P. Mabanag, complainant, versus Marvin A. Ramos, Sheriff the 4th, Branch 34, Regional Trial Court, Balayuan Law Union respondent.
Okay.
Officially noted A. So, buckle up.
Yeah.
To give you some background, this case stems from a long-running land dispute, civil case number 705, which was settled back in 2010. The tenants on the land owed back rent, and it was Sheriff Ramos's job to enforce the court's decision and collect that money.
So, straightforward enough. But this is where things take a turn. In 2019, Sheriff Ramos accepts 50,000 pesos from the tenants, claiming he was doing so on behalf of Dr. Mabanag's brother, Dante Luis Leoncini. But the problem is there was absolutely no court order authorizing him to do this.
So right from the start, we see this potential breach of trust. The 2002 revised manual for clerks of court is very clear about a sheriff's duties, and accepting money without a court order is a direct violation.
Absolutely. It raises questions about, his judgment and whether he was acting, in accordance with his responsibilities.
Right. Now, fast forward to the COVID-19 pandemic when Dr. Mabanag needed that money. When she contacted Sheriff Ramos, he initially claimed to be on leave, which, kind of sounds like a stalling tactic.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But then he drops the bombshell. He admits he actually spent the money.
Whoa, that's a huge revelation. What was his explanation for using funds that weren't his?
Well, he tried to claim that he had an agreement with the deceased Leoncini to use the money. However, the evidence supporting this alleged agreement was extremely weak.
Oh, so it sounds like he was grasping at straws. But wouldn't Dr. Mabanag have some proof that this money was hers and Ramos was in the wrong?
She did, and this is where technology comes into play in a big way. Ramos denied ever texting Dr. Mabanag about the money, but she was able to present screenshots of their conversation.
Oh, wow.
Which included his admission that he had spent the funds and promised to repay her.
So those text messages became key evidence.
Exactly. This case really highlights how text messages and other forms of digital communication are now widely accepted as admissible evidence in court.
It's almost like a modern day version of a handwritten letter or a signed contract.
Right.
But now it's all happening, digitally.
Precisely. And it raises some interesting questions about, the implications of our digital footprint and how it can be used in legal proceedings.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to this case, right? Because didn't Ramos claim he gave the money to Leoncini and even had a receipt to prove it?
He did, but there's a major problem with that. Leoncini was deceased at the time Ramos presented this receipt.
Oh, okay. So that complicates things. How can you verify a transaction when one party is no longer alive to testify?
Right. That's where a legal concept called the dead man statute comes in. It essentially prevents someone from taking advantage of a situation where they can make claims about an agreement or transaction, and the other party to that agreement is no longer alive to refute or support those claims.
So it's a safeguard to prevent one-sided stories and potential exploitation.
Exactly. And in this case, the dead man statute works against Ramos. He can't rely on Leoncini's testimony to support his claim that he handed over the money. It leaves him in a difficult position, especially with the text message evidence from Dr. Mabanag contradicting his story.
It sounds like the evidence was really stacking up against him. So at this point, what happens next? Does the case go to trial?
Well, there's another interesting turn of events. Dr. Mabanag actually withdrew her complaint against Ramos.
Wait, really? Why would she do that if she had such strong evidence against him?
It's not entirely clear from the case documents, but it's possible they reached some sort of private agreement or settlement.
So does that mean Ramos is off the hook?
Not so fast. Even though Dr. Mabanag withdrew her complaint, the Supreme Court didn't simply dismiss the case.
Mm-hmm.
They recognized that they had a greater responsibility to address the misconduct allegations against a court officer.
Okay.
They weren't going to let this slide just because the complainant decided to withdraw.
So here's where it gets really interesting.
Mhm.
The court recognized that they had a greater responsibility to address the misconduct allegations against a court officer.
Yeah.
They weren't going to let this slide just because the complainant decided to withdraw.
It's a powerful statement about their commitment to accountability within the judicial system. They're basically saying this isn't just about a personal dispute anymore. It's about maintaining public trust in the courts.
Right. So they decided to proceed with the case even without the complainant's active participation.
Yeah.
What was the court's final ruling?
They found Ramos guilty of both simple misconduct for initially accepting the money without authorization and gross misconduct for using those funds for personal expenses.
Wow. A double whammy. What were the consequences for these actions?
He was hit with a hefty fine of 170,000 pesos and permanently barred from holding any public office, even though he had already resigned from his position as sheriff.
So even resignation didn't shield him from the consequences of his actions.
Exactly. The court made it clear that actions have repercussions regardless of your current employment status, and they emphasized that the fine could be deducted from any benefits or leave credits he might have accrued during his time as a court officer.
It's a strong message that misconduct won't be tolerated and that there are systems in place to ensure accountability.
Absolutely. And this case has so many fascinating layers to unpack. We've got the initial breach of trust, the role of technology in providing evidence, the complexities of the dead man statute, and the Supreme Court's decision to proceed with the case even after the complaint was withdrawn.
It's like a legal thriller, but it's all too real and has significant implications for how our justice system operates.
It definitely raises questions about ethics, accountability, and the evolving landscape of legal proceedings in a digital age.
Now, before we dive deeper into some of those larger themes, let's take a quick pause. Okay. So I'm really curious about the Supreme Court's decision to move forward with the case even after Dr. Mabanag withdrew her complaint. Like what kind of precedent does that set?
Yeah, that's a crucial point. It demonstrates that the court sees these misconduct allegations against its officers as a matter of public concern, not just, a private dispute between individuals. They're essentially saying that maintaining the integrity of the judicial system is paramount.
It's like they're holding themselves to this higher standard, recognizing that the public needs to have faith in the fairness and impartiality of the courts.
Precisely. And the court's decision sends a strong message to all court officers that misconduct will have consequences regardless of whether the original complainant chooses to pursue the case or not. It reinforces this idea that they are accountable for their actions.
It seems like this case could have a ripple effect, like making other court officers think twice before engaging in similar behavior.
Absolutely. This ruling, it sets a powerful precedent. It puts everyone in the judicial system on notice that ethical conduct and adherence to the law are non-negotiable.
So beyond the precedent it sets, what practical implications does this case have? Especially regarding the acceptance of money by court officers.
Well, it underscores the need for strict financial controls and transparency within the court system.
Yeah.
There should be clear protocols in place regarding, the handling of funds, and any deviation from those protocols should be thoroughly investigated.
It's like having checks and balances to prevent any one person from having too much control over financial matters.
Exactly. And these checks and balances should include regular audits to ensure that funds are being managed appropriately and that there's a clear paper trail for every transaction.
That makes sense. It seems like technology could also play a role here, not just in providing evidence like the text messages in this case, but also in preventing such situations from happening in the first place.
You're absolutely right. Secure electronic record-keeping systems could track every financial transaction, making it, much harder for funds to be misappropriated or for unauthorized transactions to occur. Digital signatures could also, add another layer of security and accountability.
So we're talking about using technology to enhance transparency and create a system where it's more difficult for misconduct to slip through the cracks.
Precisely. And it's not just about technology, it's also about, fostering a culture of ethical conduct within the judicial system. Ongoing training for court officers, emphasizing the importance of integrity, transparency, and adherence to financial protocols could be highly beneficial.
It sounds like a multi-pronged approach is needed, combining technology, stricter regulations, and a focus on ethical training.
I agree. It's about creating a system that minimizes the opportunities for misconduct and maximizes accountability.
Now, shifting gears a bit, I wanted to touch on the dead man statute. It played a crucial role in this case, but it also raises some interesting questions, especially in the digital age. We leave behind so much digital evidence, emails, text messages, social media posts. How does the dead man statute apply to this vast amount of information?
That's a fascinating question, and one that legal scholars are grappling with as we become increasingly reliant on digital communication. The dead man statute was designed for a time when most communication was face to face or through written letters, where it was more difficult to create a false record. But in the digital age, we leave a trail of data everywhere we go.
So how do we balance the need to protect the integrity of legal proceedings with the reality that so much communication is now digital and often easily accessible?
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act. Courts are still figuring out how to apply the dead man statute in the context of digital evidence. There are concerns about the authenticity of digital communications. How do you prove a text message was actually sent by the person it claims to be from? How do you prevent tampering or fabrication?
It seems like there's a whole new layer of complexity when it comes to evaluating the reliability of digital evidence.
There is, and the legal system is still evolving to address these challenges. It's likely we'll see more cases that test the boundaries of the dead man statute and force courts to develop new standards for assessing digital evidence.
It's almost like we need a digital version of the dead man statute, one that takes into account the unique characteristics of online communication.
That's an interesting thought. Perhaps a set of guidelines specifically for digital evidence addressing issues like authentication, chain of custody, and the potential for manipulation. It's definitely an area where further legal development is needed.
It's fascinating to see how technology is forcing the legal system to adapt and evolve.
Absolutely, and this case is a prime example of how those forces are playing out in real time. It highlights the need for ongoing dialogue between legal experts, technologists, and policymakers to ensure that our laws keep pace with the rapid advancements in digital communication.
This has been a truly insightful discussion. We've uncovered so many layers to this seemingly straightforward case, from ethical considerations to technological advancements and their impact on the legal system.
It's a testament to the complexity of the law and how it's constantly evolving to address new challenges. And I think it's important to remember that the law isn't just a set of abstract rules. It has a real impact on people's lives.
Exactly, and cases like this bring those impacts into sharp focus. It reminds us that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing process, one that requires constant vigilance, adaptation, and a commitment to upholding the highest ethical standards.
Well said. And I think that's a powerful message to leave our listeners with as we wrap up this deep dive.
Before we do, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What aspects of this case stood out to you? What questions does it raise in your mind about the Philippine legal system or the role of technology in our lives?
Yeah, it's amazing how one case can spark so many different lines of thought about the law and technology and ethics. Yeah, it really is. It's a reminder that these issues are deeply interconnected. And as our world becomes increasingly digital, we'll continue to see those connections play out in new and sometimes unexpected ways.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it back to the heart of the matter. What can our listeners take away from this case and apply to their own understanding of the Philippine legal system?
I think there are several key takeaways here. First, it underscores the importance of accountability within the judiciary.
Hmm.
The Supreme Court's decision to pursue this case, even after the complainant withdrew, sends a clear message that they're committed to holding their officers to the highest ethical standards.
Right.
It demonstrates that misconduct will not be tolerated, and they're willing to take action to protect the integrity of the court system.
It's reassuring to know that there are mechanisms in place to address these types of situations, and that the court is taking its oversight role, seriously.
Exactly. Second, this case highlights the evolving role of technology in legal proceedings.
Mm.
We saw how text messages became, crucial evidence.
Right.
It also raises broader questions about, the admissibility and reliability of digital evidence in general. As we generate more and more data in our daily lives, it's essential to think about how that data might be used in legal contexts, and what safeguards are needed to ensure its authenticity and integrity.
It's like we're entering this new era of evidence where digital footprints can be just as important as physical evidence.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the third takeaway, which is the importance of, staying informed about these evolving issues. The law is not static. It's constantly adapting to new challenges and technologies. By being aware of these changes and engaging in thoughtful discussions about their implications, we can all contribute to a more just and equitable legal system.
So it's a call to action for our listeners to be engaged citizens, not just passive observers of the legal system.
Absolutely. By understanding how the law works, the challenges it faces, and the ways in which it's evolving, we can all play a role in shaping a more just future.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredibly illuminating. We've explored a single case, but in doing so, we've touched on some of the most pressing issues facing the Philippine legal system today.
It's been a pleasure to dissect this case with you and delve into these fascinating topics. I hope our listeners have found it equally engaging.
I'm sure they have. And if you're listening and found this deep dive insightful, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you? What questions are still lingering in your mind?
Yeah.
Leave us a comment below, and let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, we always appreciate hearing from our listeners. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our future deep dives. We've got some incredible episodes lined up, exploring a wide range of fascinating topics from history and science to culture and technology.
Until then, keep those minds curious and those conversations